I like to have as many comfortable carp in the area as possible. And they kind of get sometimes a little weird in the spawn where they will all of a sudden just hard charge something out of nowhere.
If you love sight fishing and you love like trying to be sharp and tight with your casts, this is ideal for you.
If you can get it this close to them, you have to do that.
We've got a very special guest, and that is none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jake Flood. And Jake is, he's lived across the country, as he told me, not in his opinion, not a lot of places, but he's got a good spread.
Yeah.
So, Jake, tell me about where you're from and how you made your way here to Arkansas.
Yeah. So, from New Jersey, a little dirty Jersey native. Grew up fishing like striper off the coast and inland lakes and rivers. There's a bunch of good trout fishing around the Delaware region. So I had an uncle who owned a fly shop, and that's kind of what got me into it originally.
That'll do it. So like early on, what age did you start fly fishing?
I think I caught my first trout when I was like 5 to 7 with him, somewhere in there. I think it was like 6, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Like 6 years old. It was in his private water he had, throwing like pellet flies, and caught my first trout on a fly rod.
All right.
And then from then, another 6 years went by, and he gave me my first 6-weight. It was like a legit setup, St. Croix bank robber, which was sweet. It was a great rod. And then, just kind of fished every day I could. I don't know. I had some close family and friends, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird coming from Jersey. You wouldn't expect that.
Yeah,
but
way different than what you'd think. So were you like outside of the city a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So some suburbs. Morris County was the exact area I was raised in, but it was cool because it was 45 minutes to the city without traffic, of course. 2 hours with traffic.
Sure.
And the same to the shore. Which was awesome. So it was kind of in a cool location. An hour north of you, you're in the Poconos. So there was a lot to do, actually, which is cool.
And for your family, it sounds like being outside was like a big part of just growing up, like always fishing, always out on the water.
Yeah. Grandfather owned some land in the Poconos, and we did like family hunting trips every year near Thanksgiving for whitetail. And, just had... On that side of the family, there was another uncle who owned like a hunting ranch and everything in PA. And then, just kind of had a bunch of weird stuff. Grandfather was, he had a big old offshore boat. Every time we visited him in Florida, we'd go fishing. It's kind of just a thing we did all the time, for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's a good way to grow up. And obviously, so your passion for fishing kind of led you to some different places as you left school and went to college, and then that took you other places. Talk to me about after you left Jersey, where did you go from there?
I went, so when I was still in Jersey in high school, I started working out west in Idaho in the summers. And that was kind of my first time like venturing away for fishing that far from home. And spent a summer out there, or 2 summers through high school there. And then on my way to Jersey, I stopped in at a few places. The first year I had my drift boat and fished kind of my way back in a couple spots for carp in a couple weird spots in Indiana, and did some weird stuff on the way back. And then went to college, actually. First semester, freshman year, was at University of Maine in Orono, which is a super cool area. You got like streams running through campus that have smallmouth and brook trout.
Oh, neat.
And stuff.
Right on campus?
Yeah.
Dude.
I forget the name of the river. If you said it, I would know it, or if I looked it up, I would be able to tell you. But yeah, right through the center of campus in Orono there. And it was sick. It was just a fun little time, and kind of got my fishing bug going. Was originally going to school. Was like, okay, play some club hockey maybe, and and do well in school, right? And then it just mentality changed straight to fishing every day. And then I was like, okay, time to get out of here. Knew about Arkansas because on my drive back up to Maine from Idaho, stopped in, fished with my girlfriend now and her brother, who's a good fishing buddy of mine, and fished the Illinois.
Okay.
I
All
was
right.
like, this is sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So transferred to here immediately.
Had you ever been to the Ozarks before?
Not before that road trip.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was like, boom, I'm here. I love this. I'm moving.
It was love at first sight.
It was immediate, man. Like, I had a buddy here who loved fishing. He was like, yeah, I need a roommate. I was like, sweet. You know, like, perfect. I can have my truck and my boat as a freshman off campus, right? So that was super cool. Yeah, it was just kind of a cool fit.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Just to like pick up and be like, dude, I'm moving to that place. Like, I loved it so much. I'm going to go to school there and just try to fish and be outside.
Yep.
Love it, man. It's cool.
How
Got a
did
plane buzzing over us right now.
Yeah, it's a little loud. Sorry, everybody.
That's what you get when you're outside. You get a little bit of things that you're not expecting, but you just roll with the punches.
Here for it.
Yeah.
How did you go from school to full-time guide? What was that like?
So I started guiding out west in the summers
That's right.
for world-class anglers, and I was like, dang, that's a cool way to make money as a kid. Like, it's good money as a kid, right? As you get older, you start to realize it's not good money, but you still love it, right? But yeah, I was like, that's a great way. Maybe I can work 1 or 2 days a week and have some beer money, right?
Yeah.
Was basically my thought. And then in the summers, save all that and spend it all year here or whatever on saltwater trips or stuff like that. Just assumed, like, it's cheap to be a guide.
Yeah.
When, I know they're bumping the rate up now, but when I've got here as a resident, it was $25 for a guide license and just get insurance. You're ready to go.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you know what they're bumping it up to? I remember seeing it.
I don't remember the number. I want to say a couple $100 for resident.
Yeah.
I don't know, though.
I think you're right. I remember seeing that in the last kind of survey that Game and Fish had sent out.
Yeah.
When people think of fly fishing, I think a lot of people's minds, like, and I don't blame them, go to trout probably first. And then from there, I think the smallmouth scene has kind of taken off. And people are like, I love smallmouth on the fly. But then there are so many other fish that you can catch that I think a lot of people, one, don't realize you can catch on a fly rod. And then two, like, is actually worth the chase, and it's a different challenge. It's not the same. And it's a huge fish.
Yeah.
Like, you can go out and like chase something like a carp, and like my good buddy Kyle over here, as we've had this morning, already had some success and pulled in what you call a small fish. Kyle and I are looking at each other like,
That's a huge fish.
that sucker's 10 pounds. What are you talking about? A small fish. And so it's a cool thing that we've never really tried. And so we appreciate you for having us out. That's what we're doing out here is learning how to do this. But that's what we wanted to talk to you about is you've had this experience and you've been chasing carp for a while and you are obviously guiding and taking people out to do it. And so we're like, dude, we got to go sit down with this guy and just like have him chop it up and break it down for us of how can people who are listening go out and just like chase carp and experience that. So the question I'll ask you first is, when it comes to fly fishing, why should people target carp?
Why not is how I would answer that, right? Because think about it after what you guys have done today. If you're, the only reason why not would be like a super relaxed fishing day, right? Which is trout fishing is awesome for. Bass fishing can be awesome for it at certain times of the year. But if you're like interested in like really improving certain skill sets that transfer over to everything else besides trout, it's a great fish to do that with.
Yeah.
Is mainly the main reason I fish for him. It just kind of keeps my skills sharp and lets me practice stuff that I wouldn't get to practice by just fishing for trout or bass all the time.
Yeah, we've already seen this morning. It's a completely different style.
Yeah.
You're locked in. You're looking for the slightest movements and shadows as you're trying to sight fish. Because everything that we've been doing today has been sight fishing. So, so if you love sight fishing and you love like trying to be sharp and tight with your casts, to me, this is ideal for you.
Yeah, if you don't want to venture and pay, money to go fly or drive somewhere and redfish in, stuff like that, this is what I do when I'm itching to get out and do something like that. I come here and beat them up.
And this is just in our backyard, right? Like there's not a lot of places where carp aren't.
Yeah, exactly. They were introduced in the 1880s, I believe, as a food source, and eventually, the fact that they can spawn from a range of 63-degree water to 78-degree water and spawn in stagnant and moving water they just took over. Every time there's a flood, I mean, they can last 40 minutes on a dry bank until they flop into the next puddle and live for a little bit. Maybe they get grabbed by a bird and moved into the pond, or like the possibilities are endless. I see them all the time in Fayetteville, just in creeks on paths around the WMAs too. You'll see them. The whole White River system has them. All the lakes have them. Everything has them.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
Man, to your point about it's something different. It keeps you sharp. I'm not going to lie. I thought catching them was going to be a lot easier than it has been today. We've made a lot of shots.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of pretty decent shots.
Yeah.
But pretty decent from my take, which is a lot of trout fishing, a lot of bass fishing. It's like
For
you get it in
sure.
the general area and you can probably make them eat it.
Right.
This one, I mean, you got to be dialed in. Like you're hitting the size of a quarter.
Yeah.
Is what you're trying to get to. And so we've made a lot of casts this morning and have caught one fish.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. But
That's
it's
a good
still
day
like,
carping.
This is hard.
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
cool.
And yeah, every fish is different too, right? So it forces you to cast a little differently, like whether they're quartered away, stopping, mudding, cruising slowly, or moving fast. Like every fish has a different cast and presentation that it needs, which is cool, which you guys probably saw a little bit of today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm replaying, like Kyle said, we've had one fish to the boat, but we also had one that we actually got it to eat, and I just ripped it out of his mouth. And so there's some finesse with it too.
For sure.
Even down to the hook set, that's way different than what you would hook a smallmouth on or a trout on, where you're just like, you're ripping it and you're trying to set a good hook set. There's some finesse that you have to play, which adds just that extra layer of skill and challenge.
Totally. Like once you finally get one to eat, you got to remember their mouths are really soft. They don't really charge a fly, turn with it, and go the other way. So you don't feel them necessarily all the time. You kind of have to read their body language for the eat. And every single fish you cast, that's going to eat it just a little bit differently.
Yeah. We were out here today,
Yeah.
right? We saw a whole bunch of fish. We're casting to them. We're trying to get it in the vicinity. Sometimes they're happy and they're wanting to play ball. Sometimes they're not. We probably made, 100, 200 casts before we actually had one come eat.
Yeah.
How often do you see that actually happen to where, like, cast to actually hook up ratio?
Oh, it's small. Obviously, the more you do it and the more carp you cast at, you learn where to put it on certain types of fish. And that improves your odds a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So, like, the other day I was taking a buddy. It was his second time doing it. And, he got lucky his first time doing it, hooked one within 4 casts or something like that. And then the next time he missed every single shot. I think we fed 3 or 4 fish and, made similar amount of casts and didn't come tight. But then I stood up for 3 casts and caught one. So it's like, it really just, it's kind of getting lucky and getting in front of the right fish. And it's kind of putting it where it needs to be on each different fish.
Yeah, it's time behind the line. Like you actually have to do it.
So that improves your odds, right?
Makes sense.
Like my best day carping, I went 6 for 6. I had 6 shots and I caught 6 carp.
Yeah.
That was my personal best day doing it. And I've had a lot of days where it's like 1 to 4 shots and catch 1 fish. So even then, not great odds.
Yeah.
Right? But that's the same thing with certain red fishing, like clear water red fishing. Like, you can accept the fact that not every good shot's going to get eaten, right? And same ideals go into permit fishing. They're, some people say they're honest or not honest or whatever. But, you can do everything right sometimes and it not work out. And that's the same deal with these guys. And you just accept that and you just move on. You find the next one.
Yeah.
You just keep on going.
Keep rolling.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's one of those things. It's like, I can see, and even hearing you talk about it, is the more time you spend behind it, the more time you spend doing it, you can actually see that return, because you're like, I've seen a fish eat in this scenario where he's moving towards me or he's moving away. I know where to put it. He didn't take that hook set, or I messed up that hook set. Here's what I can do. So the next time you go do it, you can get that return on, like, I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit more than I did when I started.
Exactly. Every fish teaches you something.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
I love it, man.
And sometimes you can't see like a trout in a run, right? Like you don't see what they're doing under the water. You don't see how they're using the seam lines and the debris lines. Like with these, you kind of see what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it allows you to just improve a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. When it comes to right now, we're sitting here and it is middle of June. We are fishing to, these are spawning fish, or they're just after the spawn?
Some of them are post spawn, some of them are still spawning.
Okay. So what's going on right now in the Ozarks with carp, and then kind of the next like couple of months, month or two out? How do things change?
It depends which body of water they're in, the water temps annually of the place. But generally in the Ozarks, we're adding all the spots that I've fished and I've seen that spawn start at April through the end of June.
Okay.
Is kind of the spawn period. You'll see a lot of fish jumping out of the lakes. If you're driving on a bridge and you see a giant fish and you're like, there's nothing else that can be, it's probably a good lake to go check out for them or something like that. But you'll see them. I don't know if you saw them. You guys saw them today.
Yeah.
Breaching all over the place. So those are the fish that are deep and on the weed edges, still spawning in like 1 to 4 feet of water. And then running out and swimming around, maybe grabbing a quick meal and heading back in.
Why do they jump like that?
I think for a couple different reasons. I know that's how they, release. You'll see them like, especially in the weeds. I was like watching one day real heavy, watching them release, their stuff, eggs and sperm, and they like wiggle really hard, and that kind of like forces them out of the water sometimes.
Huh.
Can you kind of picture that?
Yeah.
They like wiggle, and they're like, shoot.
Yeah.
Do like a little cartwheel or something. I don't know if that's part of it. And sometimes I've heard they're shaking off parasites and stuff like that, kind of cleaning themselves up.
Yeah.
I don't know why every fish jumps,
Yeah.
but that's my guess.
It's they might be like slicking their hair back, like when you come up out of the water real hard.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
Like, I gotta look good for the ladies.
Totally. You never know.
I like
They're
it.
smart.
So we're kind of sitting here. Some of them are still spawning. Some of them are kind of coming out and they're
Yep.
post spawn. Maybe even take me back to like, can you catch carp year round?
You can.
Okay. So pre-spawn, spawn, post.
Yeah, I've had some pretty good days of like winter carp fishing too. If you know where they're at, and you can see their body just a little bit. Our creeks get really low and clear in the winters, so you can find them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as active, but as those water temps heat up, they start getting more active and they start chasing more. Their metabolism speeds up. So through that spawn period, though, you'll get fish that are just like intermittently kind of feeding, kind of what you saw today. One feeds a little bit, he's moving around, feeds, and then all of a sudden he's off the flat and he's back in the deep water.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of intermittent feeding in between spawning, but they're not as curious as they are per se post spawn. Once you get into that post spawn phase, they'll really start chasing your flies even on not great presentations. Whereas this time of the year, you really have to be on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be a little ninja with it.
Gotcha. Because they're just not moving near as much.
Yeah, they're not going to move out of their way too much, exactly, because they're expanding so much energy on the spawn already.
Yeah. Gotcha. So today, like, we're out here and we've been fishing for a couple hours, and we've been seeing.
You can explain the the setup, Kyle, the boat and why we're doing what we're doing on it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important.
Yeah, Jake, if you want to kind of talk us through the setup of your boat and, like he said, what we're doing.
That was a really loud frog.
That was a really loud frog. Kind of made me jump a little bit.
Yeah. This is just like your standard Arkansas trout boat, right? Your White River jet boat, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money getting a platform welded and stuff, so I got like a $160 aluminum scaffolding platform.
I love it.
Yeah, and it gets you up above the motor.
It works.
And then we have a push pole that we use.
Which you don't see a lot of.
Not
you
around
really don't.
here.
Not around here.
No. But yeah, we use that to sneak around. Rowing, you can get in front of them sometimes, but you're gonna have to make further casts, and you're gonna spook them a little bit easier than you would with a push pole. So the push pole definitely helps to get close to the fish.
And a trolling motor would just spook them.
Depends where you are.
Okay.
If they're in deeper water, you're good. But in sometimes we're fishing in half a foot of water here, and in a lot of the spots that I fish, it's half a foot to 2 feet. And if a trolling motor is going to make more noise.
Yeah.
Might work in a bigger lake along a deeper bank or on a deeper mud flat. Kind of just spot lock and hold there. That might work. I don't know. I never used one for them.
Yeah. It's probably just, it limits you, it sounds like. You have to have like a lot more specific type of place and bottom structure than you would like out here. Push pole is the way to go. And for someone who maybe doesn't have like this boat, you were saying you could do like a paddle board.
Yeah, and just stab the paddle in the mud. I've been successful with that as a kid.
Okay.
Kayaks and stuff like that too, just stabbing and holding. And then, you can get these like little clips that hold your poles. I think they sell like little kayak super sticks, I think they're called.
Okay.
And you can get those now. It's like a 12-foot push pole, and it's a telescopic, and it just like latches on. It'll anchor you. I've seen some dudes on YouTube get like really nice setups for that stuff. So something like that would work really well too. It's all about just not disturbing the water.
Yeah.
That's really the big thing, and that's what the push pole is great for.
Gotcha. So for someone who's maybe trying to get out and they want to go carp fishing, kind of the first thing you have to do is find them, right?
Yeah.
So what goes into the scouting process for you of finding carp and finding carp that you feel like are fishable, quote unquote?
Okay. Yeah, so I look on the maps, just satellite images, and you see shallow areas and lakes. Maybe you do a little research on where carp were stocked originally and look near those river and lake systems that they were stocked in originally.
Are you just like Googling that and looking for
you just
any kind of information?
Dig.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll find something that'll help you out at some point, right? But even if that, like just look at any of the lakes around here and you see some shallow mud or you see some moss that doesn't look like it's in too deep of water, it's worth a check if you're interested in going after them. That's kind of how I operate. I fish all the lakes around here for them. And you just kind of look at the map and you're like, cool, that's the shallow part. So you learn that part of the lake, the fishable part of the lake. And you don't even bother with the other stuff, really. It's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for flats that carp use at certain periods of the day.
Mm-hmm. And what are they using the flats for? Like, why did they gravitate to the flats?
Easier feeding, different food sources too. If you're 50 feet down, 20 feet down, whatever, there's going to be different food source than shallow, weedy mud, touching the banks, stuff like that. I think it's just easier for them to feed.
Yeah.
Shallower water, they can see better. They can feel better. They have barbels on common carp have 2 barbels on each side of their mouth that they use to like taste the mud, and that's how they find their food. So you saw today with the flies, they spit it in and out and they rub it along the side of their face. They're tasting it without putting it in their mouth before they eat it.
They can taste outside of their mouth.
I don't know if it's like how we taste, but that's what I've read. Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What a weird fish.
You're saying too they have way more lateral lines.
Yes, than your like trout or bass
Yeah.
or carp can have 6 to 8 lateral lines, common carp. Whereas grass carp, I think, can have up to 9, and they all have 6 though, which is cool.
Which is why polling and not making noise and
very important.
Not playing music and jumping around on the deck and all that's really important.
Not moving your feet around too much. Be smooth, picking up a rod and all that.
That kind of blew my mind when you said that. Of like, even when you're casting, like, set your feet and try not to move and wiggle around as you're casting, and keep your balance, because they can spook just from hearing the vibrations of the boat due to those extra lateral lines. And
that's very similar with like redfish too. I don't know how many lateral lines a redfish has, but like whenever I've been on a guide's boat red fishing, it's like, hey, don't move your feet much up there. Like try to keep it steady. They'll feel it. Same idea. Like when you move your feet, you wake the boat, and they can feel that. If you stay steady and let the pole kind of move the boat, usually okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So if you've done your research now and you found some flats, maybe via satellite or whatever, and you're going out, what's your process from there? Is you're checking out this spot and you're trying to see what?
Boots on the ground, just get out there on some sort of vessel, maybe go spook a few. Whenever I'm investigating, my first time through there, I'll bring a rod, but I'm mostly just slapping the area with my paddle and seeing if I see any big enough wakes or, stuff like that. Just get out there and go check it out and mark it off. If you see one, great. Maybe put it in the bank and come back and check it out when you think conditions would be a little better. Maybe there's a creek that's muddying it up. It was a little too muddy last time you were there. Maybe wait till we don't get a little bit of rain and go out there again and check it out. And, if it's a bust with that, don't even bother. There's plenty of carp in this area.
Yeah.
So go find another lake and you'll find a better time.
Okay. And so if you get out there and you start seeing some, how do you know what's a fishable and happy fish versus one that's not?
Yeah, so I like to break them down into 3 speeds. So you got the mudding / tailing carp with their head down in the mud. They're rummaging, they're whipping those barbels left and right, feeling, smelling, tasting, everything. That's like a game on fish. If you can get the fly in front of that fish without landing it too hard or hitting his body with the fly or something like that, if you can get it in front of him to where he sees it, he's going to think he kicked it out of the mud, and he's just going to eat it instinctually. That's like 100% of the time. If you do it right, I've never seen one not eat if it's done right that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is like what happened with Kyle's today, right?
yes. Yeah, exactly. You put it right on the edge of the mud. He came out and just grabbed it. That was instinctual for him. It was perfect.
Okay.
And then you got that slow cruising carp, kind of like we saw that koi doing. You know, he was just kind of just chilling, circling around, maybe grabbed a quick meal, kept going. Those fish are a little harder to feed, but it's still one to cast at. I've definitely stopped them before. Those ones you definitely want to lead it a little bit more. If you get lucky and you see him duck their head down in the mud, put it right on his head real quick while you can. If he gets his head back up already and starts cruising, though, before you can get that cast, lead him and try to cut him off with it. And then you got the super fast carp, which is basically a spooked fish.
Okay.
Don't cast at it.
Yeah.
They're too smart. They have a brain this big, you know, like there's a good chance you're not going to catch that fish.
Yeah.
So just kind of wait, let them spook out. Don't disturb them anymore because most likely there's others around. Just let them go.
And why does, if that fish is already leaving, why does it matter if you're not spooking that one or spooking it?
Because they have, like, you know, when you spook one of them, they all kind of know that something's not right because they can feel that other fish moving away.
And you said they also have...
They have some sort of hormones, or I don't know what the right word is, but they release some sort
like a pheromone?
I guess, if that's the right word. I've read that too, that they alert other fish. I don't know. I've never studied a carp under a microscope or anything, but that's what I've heard.
But they basically have a way to communicate, like,
yes,
I'm spooked, and now these other fish are going to know.
Yes.
And so they're going to be a little bit more on edge to feed, too.
Exactly. So you want to let those blown fish go. Don't try to chase them with casts. Just let them run away and look for the next one.
Look for another option, because there's plenty of them.
Yes.
And carp, they're an invasive species, right? Like
super invasive. Yeah.
What is the downside, I guess, of having carp? Do they contribute to, like, disease, and do they compete with other native fish?
They definitely compete. I've seen them eat bait fish imitations when I've been bass fishing.
Okay.
Like, I've had 10 to 20 pound common carp come out and eat a double, triple articulated streamer with 2 giant stinger hooks on it, right? Like, so they're definitely doing that when, say, your bass spawn happens and you get a bunch of little fry. That kind of lines up with a carp spawn, and they kind of get sometimes a little weird in the spawn where they will all of a sudden just hard charge something out of nowhere sometimes. And I've seen them do it enough where I'm sure they're out competing some fish, or at least limiting the population of smaller crayfish every year.
Yeah.
Or, you know, just stuff like that.
Right.
You know, they're gross too, man. Like, they eat so much of their body weight every day. I don't know how much common carp eat, but I know grass carp eat like 10 to 20% of their body weight a day.
10 to 20% of their body weight?
Yeah, or 10 to 20 times their body weight a day.
10 to 20 times.
Yes.
Holy moly, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And that's like an accumulation of what? Like, what are they feeding on?
Algae, grass. Grass carp will eat insects too, and crustaceans as well. I don't know how much
eat a whole lot of grass to eat.
Yeah,
20
that's
times
why
their body weight.
You see maps on the, you see lakes on the map that are cleared out with no weeds. Go check it out.
Yeah,
because it gets really hot here and weeds grow everywhere.
Right.
So that might be a good grass carp spot. Common carp, I don't know how much they eat per day, but that's their focus all day.
Yeah.
Right. They're
chowing on something.
They're chowing. They're eating a bunch for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've talked through how to find them, how you might go scout an area. Now, if you've found them, you've spooked a few, you know they're in that area. Talk to me about the technique, the setup. Like, we've kind of already said, like, the boat, what you need to have, or
craft
alternatives.
Yeah.
Now from there, like, how are you putting together a rod outfit to go chase these on the fly specifically?
Yeah. So in the creeks, I usually fish like a 6 or 7 weight. I want to be a little more gentle. Usually shots tend to be shorter, closer quarters. So I do like a lighter rod for that stuff. Out in the lakes, though, I bump it up from 7 to 8 weights, just to give you a little more power on them when they want to run you into a log or a patch of weeds. You can actually stop them a little bit more. And delivering heavier flies too, accurately. That's another thing. Like, I'm comfy throwing a really heavy fly on a 6 weight and making it work. It's not the best thing to do with it in the creeks, but if you bring a 7 weight, you're going to have a little bit easier of a time delivering that dumbbell-eyed or however you weight your flies to that fish. So like today we have bead chain eyes on our flies is what we've been throwing. It's pretty shallow, but
Okay.
if you had a 6-weight with the wind and everything, you're gonna get some waver. So I like to make sure you're accurate. Sometimes it's overpowered for the fish for sure. If you hook a small one, you're gonna rip them apart on an 8-weight. But getting the fly there is the most important thing, and that's why I use them in the lakes because your casts are farther, can be farther, and if you need to do it, you got it.
Gotcha. So you're running an 8-weight floating line.
Yep.
Today we're fishing a bead chain. And what kind of fly is this? Like if someone were to Google something.
It's very similar to like a scarpion, which is, I don't know the gentleman's name who ties it, but it's fish chase flies. He ties something, it's called a scarpion. It's very similar to that and like a strong arm merkin kind of hybrid thing, which is a saltwater fly for like bonefish and permit and all bunch of stuff, redfish.
Colors, how important is it to have different colors in your
I think
setup?
it's really important, especially for confidence. If you put enough flies in front of enough fish, well, you're probably going to get an eat. But for me, I change the fly color, I change the hope, right? So I like to change flies. I've definitely seen some days with certain light conditions and water clarity that they can see certain stuff better. Sometimes it's too much and they'll run away from it if they see it too well, it feels like. But I think have a variation from natural colors to some couple hot orange, hot pink, stuff like that. Reds.
Right.
Reds work really well.
Because those you'll be able to see actually your fly a little bit more in the water too.
Well, that helps as well. Yeah. It's definitely tougher with the natural colored flies, like tan bottom fishing a tan fly. You're like, okay,
no chance.
It's hard.
It's over there somewhere.
Yeah.
Kyle, if you're going to try to describe this fly to somebody who's just listening, how would you do it?
Okay, so it's got small dumbbell eyes on it.
The hook is much smaller than you might expect.
Yep. And so what kind of hook is this?
Let me see on that one. I've been kind of playing around. So this is the Kona Big Game Hunter. They sell them at Bass Pro, I'm pretty sure, and up in Rogers.
Yeah.
And you can buy them on Amazon too, but that's a size 4, I believe, on that one. And I like it because it's super wide gap and it's short shanked.
Yeah. And it's a lot more. Yeah, you're right. Short shanked. It's a lot more. I mean, I would say like rounded, not quite a circle hook, but more that way.
For sure.
And then you've got some red on here. You've got some tan, and then you've got a little bit of purple flash.
Yeah.
Is what I'm looking at this one. Then you've got some rubber legs coming off the side, tan and black. And then this is like a yarn.
That's just ultra chenille tied, 2 pieces tied together in an overhand knot, and you pull it tight and it forms like little claws.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like a crawdaddy worm mix thing. I don't know.
It does. It looks like a little bitty crawdad, basically.
Yeah.
With some of the legs, but a little bit more eccentric.
Or it doesn't have
looks
to
like
be
you
so
just-
fancy.
Yeah.
Like I have some really simple ones too that are just cactus chenille and ultra chenille, and that's the only thing on the fly. So
okay.
ultra chenille tail, just one piece of that same thing, and then just cactus chenille around the body.
Huh.
So I mean, it just depends really what your carp like.
Yeah.
Honestly.
What
And
are
we're
your carp
fishing
like?
a long leader.
Yes, long leader is always a good move. If it's super muddy, you can get away with a short leader. But I generally fish 12 to 14 feet leaders when I'm fishing for them. Just, I don't know, any edge, I want it with them, right?
Yeah.
They're already hard enough to catch.
They are, man. They are. And they're so spooky.
Yeah.
And so if you spook one, like what's the odds that fish is going to turn back on in enough time to where you're like, I mean, do you need to go like sit off to the side? Because we kind of did that a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Where we were like, all right, let's just go park the boat a little bit and just wait.
Yes, this is like my fun play zone, so these fish are pretty educated, so I kind of give them a little bit
Yeah.
every time I make a pass through the flat. I don't think that ever hurts with creek fishing, especially too.
Sure.
I'll like, even if I cast it at the fish and he comes by me 30 seconds later and presents himself, sometimes I won't cast at him if I don't feel like it's right. Sometimes I'll wait for him to go eat and get comfy again and then come right back by me or something, or maybe one of his friends does. I like to have as many comfortable carp in the area as possible.
Yeah.
That's always good. That's always good.
Yeah. Time of day, if you're going out and you've got time in the morning, is morning going to be better than, wait until the afternoon versus late in the evening?
I don't...
In your experience, like when have you caught the most fish?
Midday.
Really?
Yeah. I like to get out
High
there
sun.
earlier sometimes. Like today, I wanted to come see how many fish were actually on the flat early,
Yeah.
which was immediately. And they were feeding. But then as you saw that sun got higher, they started to become a little bit more active and start moving around a little more blatantly. So yeah, mostly midday is kind of when I'm targeting them. It's nice now. It gets dark at 9 or something like
Yeah,
that.
super late.
Yeah, you can stay out till 5, 6, and you'll have enough sunlight.
That's cool because you can kind of mix in like when the sun's real high and those bass are kind of tucked up in the shade. If you just want to like stay out in the sun and like try something different,
Yeah.
it's a good thing to fill your time with in the day and try to go do something that's a lot trickier.
Yeah, and a lot of our creeks have like, a great topwater bite in the morning and the last light in the evening. And there's, if you're like me, when I fish a creek, like I want to just throw something on the surface and have fun.
Yeah.
And, I'll break it up. Walk in with a bass leader tied up, throw the carp leader on once it's like 11:30 and start carp fishing. Then on the way back up, bass fish again. Mm-hmm. It's just something fun to mix in for sure.
Yeah, it keeps you fishing all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Mixing it up.
Anytime you can like add something in to give yourself a little bit more fun, a little bit more challenge, and spend more time in the water.
Yeah, why
It's a
not?
good time.
Always a great thing.
I don't think we've talked about bubbles.
Okay, yeah. So a cool indicator is when they're rummaging around, especially in like high methane bottoms like mud that have a lot of algae and stuff. Oxygen gets released when they're rummaging around, so they start forming like bubbles. And it looks like in your pasta pot, like a convection current type of bubble. It's not like these one little bubble happening every once in a while. It's like churning almost.
Yeah,
That's
because
what you're
we
looking
made
for.
that mistake early where we was like, oh, there's bubbles over there, and you're like, probably a turtle.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, no, it's a bubble. And you're like,
Yeah.
No, you're looking for this rolling bubble.
Yes, yeah. The convection is how I would say it looks like.
Okay. Are they feeding when that's happening?
Yeah, they're rummaging and they're just knocking up oxygen bubbles, but there's so many big bubbles coming up that it's just like, it looks like it's churning.
Okay. So that's like game on. There's a fish over there.
Especially if you see mud under it, too.
Yeah.
Like you see a fresh mud plume and then bubbles come up, you're like, oh, yeah, there you go.
I think I was surprised at how hard it was to spot these fish.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I guess in the creeks, when I see them, they're usually, in my mind, they're darker. Like they're darker. But then you come out here and they're camoed so well with that mud, and they're much more of like a tan color, and especially when you get them out and you see it's like a golden.
Yeah, I
tan.
wonder if that's like an attitude thing. I've like kept fish in aquariums before, and like I've seen it in the creeks too, where you'll see like a dark fish next to a light fish.
Yeah.
And it's like, why is that one so dark? I don't know, but I think it has something to do with the river system or something that they're in. Maybe it's just genetics. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah.
But it is hard to see, especially like the super light colored ones. In the creeks, I always feel like I spot them by their fins. They have 3 distinct fins under their body.
Okay.
And then a red tail, obviously, which gives it away. If you get lucky enough and one sticks it up, you're like, sweet. But they got like a fin, their pec fins, and then they got another set of fins here, and then they have another set, and that sets them apart from buffalo.
Okay.
Because they have that right under their tail, they have that really big fin.
Okay.
And that's the third one I'm seeing. So but the buffaloes, they kind of like have a different look to them with the fin structure. It's almost like their fins blend in better, so you can't see them as good. Mm-hmm. And that's how I spot them in the creeks, especially when they're together, because they intermingle all the time.
Yeah. And so once you're able to kind of make out the shape of the fish and see where the tail is, like that's a huge part of it, because we were talking earlier about accuracy. Just because you see a fish doesn't mean you just need to cast it right at it.
No.
How are you breaking down where to actually cast once you get a visual on it?
Yeah, just figure out where his head's facing. So if you see his tail, great, and you're like, okay, so that means his head's to the right or his head's to the left. And, that tells you which side of the fish to cast at.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're coming straight at you, it's awesome because you can see, like, everything happen. But that one's pretty obvious. You just kind of get it in front of them. But
Yeah.
when they're broadside to you, and you're seeing mud and you can't really see it, but you see that tail stick up like this, and his fins are waving this way, that means his head's to the right. If you see the tail over here, and you can look down his back and it's a slope, his head's over here.
Sure. And how close are you trying to get to that?
Depends on the water clarity, depends how spooky your fish are. I've definitely laid a few casts like 20 feet away from a fish and had him chase it in super shallow, clear water. And then in this like muddier water, you kind of want to be, if you can get it this close to them, you have to do that.
Like an inch.
Yeah, if they're mudding.
Yeah.
Because they got to be able to see it. And there's 2 different casts you can do. You can drop it right on his head in the mud. It's a little bit more risky, but if you do it right, it works. You just kind of pick like a piece of the mud line that you want that fly to disappear or come out of, and then you can see the fish come out of that mud line. That's like the immediate drop cast. And then there's the drag and drop, so you put it past the fish, especially if it's a little windier and you're not sure where it's going to land. You put it
You're
past
less
him.
accurate like me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can, put it past him, and then what you do is you drag that leader, and you pull the fly, and you're like, okay, I see the fly. It's hovering right under the surface, and then you let it sink right on his head. That's the drag and drop. And either way, you still got to get the fly
Right to that spot.
right to him in
Yeah.
the muddy water for sure.
But the drag and drop definitely does kind of extend your chance because you can overcast and not be within an inch, and then work your way back into that.
And for say, the eats are really hard to read now, especially when they're mudding, and you don't feel them. So, the drag and drop, you pulled it out of the mud, perfect, drop it right back down again. And it gives you another chance without unloading another cast and hitting the water again.
Okay.
So that's another tactical advantage to it, for sure.
Yeah. How do you know when one has eaten? Especially like if you can't really see them, or maybe even if you can, is it different? Like how do you know that you finally got one on? Because they're mudding, like you're saying. Like, it's not always super easy to see.
No, so you're looking for your line to tighten up. That's the indicator. Like if your line tightens up and your fly's in front of them, there's something happening.
Sure.
Right. So like get a little tighter and see what's up. You'll see the fish like move out of the mud line and hover above it. That's him picking it up and spitting it out, tasting it with his barbells, letting it run along the side of his face. That's what he's doing and if your fish was doing that, because your fish you hooked right on the side right here, which means he was tasting it when you hooked him. But so you're reading the body language. First of all, if it's clear and you can't see your fly, but he's chasing it or he's following it slowly, or you're about to cut him off on his route and he tails up and your fly's right there's 99% chance that he's eating your fly. And if not, he's eating something and then he's going to eat your fly next to it.
Yeah.
So that's another way to read that fish in clear water. You see that tail kick up and you're like, that's the time to go.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you see them coming at you and doing this thing, and you kind of just got to like wait for them to shut their mouth almost, because you can see their mouth
He's
snapping.
like Pac-Man coming at you, open, close, open, close.
Yeah.
And you're just waiting for him to take it.
Yes.
Okay.
So you got to be patient. It's like, I don't know, for viewers that have fished for cutthroat in the West, you let them come up and it's like an escalator rise, right? And then you let them come down with it a little bit. Same thing with the dries on the white for those bigger fish. Like you got to let them eat it. Same idea. Like you're waiting for that mouth to close, basically.
Got it. So you said, if they tail up, obvious. If they're kind of hovering over it, are you actually waiting for them to take it? Or like you're saying, Kyle, it was just tasting it.
Yeah.
And he went ahead and set the hook. Will they ever actually just go ahead and take it and swallow it?
For sure.
Are they pretty much always going to like spit it out because they're like, this isn't a real thing?
It depends on the fish. If you give it too long, I've had them hard charge it and just mouth it, and it's like, there it is, right?
Okay.
Set immediately.
Okay.
The second you see him eat it, it depends on the fish. Every fish eats different, like we were saying. So it's when you get that type of eat that Kyle had, it's that slow. Remember how I said like slow strip set? You slowly and just wait for that big wide gap hook to just touch it, and then you got him because the mouth's so soft. As long as you don't rip it out.
Like me.
Yeah.
Well, we even took a video, and you can hear in the video you saying "set it," and I don't for another second.
Well,
probably.
I said slow. I think I said slow something.
Maybe slow set.
Yeah, and then you just started going like
slowly
this.
dragging, and then as
it-
soon as I felt any tension, it was just a quick
little
quick
bump.
back,
Yep.
and then rod up.
Yep.
But not a big trout set or a big bass set. Like
There's
it's-
times for that. So when they eat a dry, like with our awesome cicada hatch, we had, they're eating dries, and you got to let them come up and eat it, and then you just as hard as you can, just Bill Dance style that thing. But that there's times for that, and then when they hard charge it and just smack it, like you put it out in front of them, and they just come and that's just hit them hard.
Yeah.
Just get the hook set because it's in his mouth and his mouth's shut on it, and you're gonna grab something with those big wide gap hooks. So there's different hook sets for different fish, which makes it even harder.
Which is another layer to the challenge.
Yeah.
For me, so I was out there and I had one coming at me. It was like in my mind textbook. I mean, he's coming. There were actually two. I was first fishing to that one on the left, but then we saw this one cruising to the right, coming right at us. So I picked up, I cast it. Thankfully, I put it in the vicinity.
Yes,
because I'm not a super
shot.
accurate caster, but I put it right in front of him. He was Pac-Manning it, and then he took it. And where did I go wrong from there?
So your line started to tighten up on the water, which is what I saw. I couldn't see the fish because there was glare, but I saw your line go shoop.
Yep.
And then I was like, you got them. And then all you had to do is just this and just bend the rod basically on them.
Basically, for someone who's just listening.
So, yes, you just got to just a little strip set.
Okay.
When they're that far, when they're past 25 feet, it's just a little strip set. If he was within that 25 feet, it would have been a slow trout set. And then, you like, once that rod bends over on the fish, you have them. But you kind of, I was like, you got them, and then you kind of ripped it fully through.
Yeah.
Which, could just tear the mouth. It could just not even really grab it, honestly.
Right.
Just because it bobbles in and out of their mouth all the time. So you kind of just overextended that hook set was all.
I hooked it like I was hooking a 18-inch smallmouth.
Yeah, like you put the beans on them.
Yeah.
A little too early.
Yeah. But I felt it. Like I felt the tension there, and I knew he was there. And I even remembered that you said, like, go soft on it. And I just couldn't help it, man. It was like, here's this 8 to 10 pound plus fish. I'm like, I gotta beef him up, man. I gotta rip him in and bring him into the boat.
Their mouths are so soft, you can rip the hook out.
Yeah. You said it's like gum.
That's how I try to express it to people, just because so they be extra cautious. But it's almost like a soft rubber.
Yeah.
So it's, you can tear it, you can rip the hook out. You just got to be gentle with it.
Yeah. Which is a helpful visual, because if you think about like hooking into a soft plastic or gum, it's like, you could definitely see how hooking into that would tear straight through.
Yeah, or just not give the hook time, because it flexes, right? Their mouth flexes, so when you put the hook, there's like an indentation, so you just didn't give it enough time with that slow tension to actually puncture, so you just nicked it. Because it flexes. It's not like hitting a bone where it's like, punch them, or like a smallmouth where like, you're probably going to get through the bone somewhere. You don't have to do that. There's no resistance there. It just goes straight through like a toothpick through a piece of saran wrap, right? But when you stab that saran wrap or that toothpick in a piece of gum, it's going to sink in there a little bit, right, before it starts to
actually puncture.
Right? That's the way I like to think about it.
Okay. Gotcha.
If that helps.
Yeah, no, that does. It's a helpful visual. So we appreciate you, Jake, man. This is fun. Let's head back out there and
let's go stick one, dude.
See if we can go catch another one.
For sure.